Hello and welcome to part 14 of SAP RAP Transactional App Development using Managed Scenario. In today's session, we will understand a concept of numbering in SAP RAP, understand how early numbering and late numbering works, and finally we will try to implement the early numbering for one of our associated entity address. Okay, late numbering, since it has to actually go through many other methods like adjust numbering during the save sequence. I will not be implementing the late numbering in this tutorial. We will only look into the early numbering, how we can actually go and implement it. If you need the late numbering video, please let me know in the comment. I will try to make one for you. Uh, by just implementing and showing it to you because in the given time of 30 minutes it will be difficult to actually go and show you all the step by step hands on for the late numbering. Hope you understand. Okay, so with that, let us then move on and first understand what early numbering is. Now early numbering uh, is a numbering type wherein that will actually assign the values to the primary keys as soon as the uh, instance is created. Okay, as soon as the instance is created, the early numbering method will be called, and the we have to actually write our logic to actually go and fill in the data. Okay, the final key value is available in the transactional buffer instantly after a create or modify request is been uh, executed, or in layman term, as soon as the user clicks on the create button, the early numbering method will be called, and that will be responsible to uh, create the numbering for each and every key value. Okay, the key value can be given by the consumer externally or by the framework internally. So when we say numbering manage, generally a framework will call the internal numbering system. Okay, that will assign, and generally it works on the GUID, and that is the reason you might have seen that we have actually used the GUID 16 to actually mention all our key fields. But in this today's tutorial, we will actually go and add a numeric value also, so that you will be uh, you'll know how you can actually go and create the your own numbering system. Now, during the save sequence, the newly created BO instance is returned to the database with the primary key values that was assigned earlier during the early numbering method. Okay, so this is how the early numbering works. Now, types of internal numbering, as we have seen, internal early numbering will be executed by the framework, and it will assign to the primary keys of the new instances that is been created. Generally, these primary keys are of UID ID. Okay, external numbering system is external early numbering is the process during which we go and we create our own numbering. We assign the values to all the primary keys during the create operation. We must ensure that the primary keys are only read only during the create. Okay, your key must be specified before an instance or a draft instance is created. Okay, and it will always generate a numbering method. Okay, if you want to uh, define the early numbering method. Okay, now how we can define the early numbering method? The syntax is giving the command early numbering for the entity that you want to actually give the early numbering. So in my case, I have gone and added a early numbering for my contact address. Okay, and since it is early numbering only for my address, it will ask us to actually implement early numbering create by association for address because address is a associated entity for our contact. Okay. Hence, early numbering CBA address for numbering will be created in our behavior pool of the root entity. Remember that this will be always uh, implemented in the root behavior pool. Okay. Early numbering for the root entity, if it is there, it will be early numbering underscore the entity name direct. If it is associated entity, then early numbering underscore CBA created by association underscore entity should be implemented. Okay. How we will implement is the logic you will have to go and um, define how you want to implement it. Now, in my example, I have actually taken both the GUID ID because we were earlier having the address GUID ID, which is address ID. Now, along with the address ID, I am also going and adding one serial number, address serial number that will be a random sequential number 1, 2, 3, 4, okay, or 10, 20, 30, whatever you decide. Okay, I will be actually implementing this design, and that will be actually shown as a serial number in the address facet here, as you can see. Okay, now during creation of this method, we we have to remember that we always have to determine the values for all the primary keys in this method itself. Okay, all the primary keys of that particular entity, we have to go and assign the values, the correct values basically to each and every primary key. Now, the values that we are trying to assign must be unique. Okay, it should not have the values that are already assigned previously to the same, especially like this 10 and 20. Okay, if we already have one value with 10, we cannot just go and assign it with 10. So we'll have to make our logic um, smart enough to actually go and read all the data and determine the values. Okay. We should always consider the entries from the draft and the main table to generate these values. So if we are having, you see here, these two are draft entities. So I should also go and get the draft entities for both the values. Okay. As well as the main table as well. Okay. Similarly, the late numbering. The late numbering refers to the late assignment of the primary keys of an instance. That means uh, when we are actually trying to save, the final values is assigned just before the instance is saved to the database. Okay. Late number is commonly used when we need no gap or gap free numbers. For example, the invoice numbers cannot be missed for a business, right? Because then will not be knowing that okay, the missed invoice number, who has actually utilized it. So in such scenarios, we always go with the late numbering system. And during the for the late numbering system, during the save sequence, the newly created BO instance is returned to the database with the primary key value that was assigned. Okay, that will be assigned. Okay, during that adjust numbering method. Okay, now again for the internal late numbering will be done by the managed system. Okay, and this numbering method is a default SAP framework method since a customer can't influence any save sequence after the point of no return. To define the late numbering, if we have to do it, we have to implement the method adjust numbers in the save sequence. Okay, and that should actually go and create the ID or the key values for it. Now, if you see the in case of the draft, okay, the transactional key will be actually created in case of the normal internal numbering, which has the draft ID and the say for example the travel ID here. But in case of the uh, late numbering, right, it will not be having the TKY, but it will have the PKY, a primary key that will be actually generated. Okay. Now we always have to use PID instead of the normal TKY. in such scenarios. Okay, a newly created insert must be uniquely identifiable by its transactional key. Okay, this is done by the extending the transactional primary key with a preliminary ID, which is a PID. Okay, to ensure that the uniqueness is there. Okay, is draft is included only in percentage TKY. In PKY, you will not be having the is draft. Remember that point. Okay. Now, if you are using the draft capability, then draft UUID is also important because as soon as you say the early numbering or late numbering, right? Uh, Generally, it will ask you. You see here the error I have shown here. Our contact DM must have a draft UUID. The contact attachment, the contact address or contact attachment. Okay, the contact address. In our case, draft table should must have a draft UUID. Okay, of type raw 16, the GUID type. Okay, because we are now saying that okay, it has the property late numbering. I have just taken a screenshot by putting a late numbering there just for you people to show, but we are not doing anything here. Okay. Now parent draft UUID should also be included if we are actually calling it in a associated entity, and that will be of type S draft underscore UUID. Okay, remember that point. So draft UUID is very important when we are actually trying to implement the numbering in case of draft. Now moving on, you see late numbering. If we give the late numbering, generally it we will have to go and create a class that should implement the adjust number method. And in our adjust number method, we have to go and uh, define all our numbering system there. Okay. Now in this case, generally since the adjust numbering is called in the save sequence, we will have to actually follow the auxiliary class pattern for this, and that is the reason I'm not actually implementing this late numbering in today's session. Rather, we can actually take this up maybe during the unmanaged scenario when I try to create that. But for now, we will only have the early numbering method implemented. Okay. So let us now get into the system and try to implement the uh, numbering system. So let us now go to our Eclipse now, okay, and let us see what we have to do. Okay, let me just first go and start with our data dictionary because now I have to go for the contact attachment. Okay, I want to actually go and add one more. This is the contact, not the contact, but contact attachment, contact address. Okay. In my contact address, you see I have actually added a address key. Okay. Address serial number as num_c2. Okay. This will actually hold the running serial number 1, 2, 3, 4 like that. Okay. For each address ID and for each contact ID, ideally it will have address serial number 1, 2, 3, 4. Okay, we actually don't need this also because these two will actually make a perfect combination. But I just wanted to show you that you can how you can go and create a non-GUID ID as well during your early numbering. Okay. Now, if you see the contact address uh, f- um draft table, okay, there also we have to go and add address serial number. Okay, that is what you have to go and do. So I have added these two there. Now once that is added, let us now go to our data definition and see what we have to do for our contact address. So in my contact interface contact entity, okay, I have to go and add the address serial number also here, okay, because this is the key field that we have added. Okay, similarly in our C contact address M, we have to go and add that key as well. Okay, so these are the basic changes that we have to go and do. Now we have to also go and add it to our metadata extension for address. Okay, in my metadata extension for address, you see I have actually gone and added the address line item as well. Okay, now once these all things are done, let us now go and in our behavior definition, let us now define a early numbering. And you see, I have actually gone and defined an early numbering for our uh, contact address. Okay. And now, once we go and define the early numbering for the address, you see, we have to remove the read-only field. If I remove this and keep it as it is, it will give me an error that it is not possible to specify both numbering is equal to manage and early numbering, because now we are not asking the person to actually go and do the numbering for us. Okay. Of course, we can keep the read only, but we cannot keep the early numbering. And that is the reason I don't want this now. So I have actually moved the read only as my contact ID, address ID, and address serial number, all of them as my read only field. Now, as soon as you go and implement this early numbering, give this early numbering method, okay, it will ask you to go and create a implementation method, and that is something that I have gone and implemented in my main entity. Okay, and if you see the main entity, it will now have early numbering created by association for address. Okay, created by association for address. Now, if we go and see the created by association for address, okay, what we have to do is we have to first uh, be very careful when we are actually doing it. What I am doing here is that for the normal address ID, it is very easy. We just use this CL system UUID, create UUID existing static that will give me the address ID. But in order for me to actually go and generate the address serial number, my logic would be first, let me get the address linkage with the contact. Okay. So what this will give me is it will give me the link between contact and the address. Now, as we know that, okay, for the early numbering, the the definition, if you see, it will give me the entities, all the entities for which we have to go and define the uh, numbering there. So I am just reading for that entity whatever is the address that is been assigned for that particular context. So it can have multiple addresses. Some of them might be already saved. Some of them we might have just used the draft functionality. Say, for example, two addresses are already been saved in our main table, but three addresses we have just kept it in our draft table. That is the reason we have to go and get the linkage there. Okay. Now, for each entity, we are just grouping it by the contact entity. Ideally, it will have only one contact. So that is the reason you always group it. Okay. This we have to use because it might be called from some other BO as well. So it's always a good practice to go and um, uh, actually assign it in a loop. Okay. Now, what we have to go and do it is we have to get the maximum serial number. And how we can go and do determine it is that first we take it from the linkage table, okay? And for all the linkage table, we that will give us the actual data with the link here, whatever we have saved, okay? Now the linkage table, how we will go? We will just loop add. Now this is a very powerful tool, command in SAP ABAP 7.4 called reduce. Okay, that where it allows us to initialize a variable, and in a loop it will allow us to calculate that variable. Okay, generally used for the aggregation. If you want to find the total sum of the particular column for a certain group or for the whole table, you can actually use the reduce. um, ABAP 7.4, this reduce function to actually uh, go and calculate that. How it works is I am just initializing the one variable called LV max, which with a 0, and just uh, what we say typecasting it to our address serial number field. That means numt2 in this case. And then for each and every linkage entity that we have, okay, I'm just looping it for those entries where the contact ID is the one which we are now processing. And then we are actually determining the LV max. And to determine the LV max, the condition is if the current value of LV max is less than the address serial number already been saved, then we are saying that okay, take the bigger one there. Otherwise, if it is greater than, then take the bigger one or between max and the address serial number. Same thing we have to now go and do it with all the entities. That means all that we have in our draft table. Okay. So, and that will come in our LS entities. Now, what we have to do is we have to just go and read our LS entity. Okay. For that particular contact ID. That is my first for loop. Okay. Now, one more thing that you have to remember is that now this time LV max, I am initializing with the LV max serial, which is already been determined using the linkage table. And now we are actually going and looping for that contact group in our entities. And that LS entity will have a percentage target that will have all the addresses that are actually stored you, during the creation time. So again, we just loop to that target, and the condition is always the same between LV max and the address serial number. Whichever is max, we just consider that, and then finally it will be assigned to our max serial. Okay. Now we all have already got our max serial number. If there is one entry, we have one serial number one there, two entry serial number two are is already been taken up. So this will give me the already utilized max serial number. Okay. So now final thing is we have to go and update the address ID and the address serial number primary keys for our address. Okay. For our contact address. Contact address. Okay. Now how we do that is now this loop we have to again go and loop it in our entities and then loop through all the target values there. Okay, this will always have all the values where the newly created or the draft entries will be there. Okay, newly created entries will be in our target. Now, the newly created entries uh, we have to loop through, and then we have to actually fill our mapped table, okay, with the new values so that it will actually be passed to the front end. Now, how we do it is we first loop at the entities for that contact ID, And for that contact ID for LFS current contact, it will have percentage target. We loop through that percentage target as a current address and then append the corresponding of current address to the map address. So everything will be now looped with this assigning field symbol to the field symbol LFS mapped address. And now which is actually pointing to the mapped structure and the map address, address ID and the address serial number we are changing. Okay. So let me now say that, okay, for the address ID, if it is already initial, then you create one GUID ID and assign it. If this has a try catch, with this particular exception, I'm not handling it here, but ideally you should handle it. Usually this will not never fail because it always uses the side date and time, so it will never fail. Okay, but it's always better to have some exceptional handling here. Similarly, the address serial number, I am just adding one to it and then assigning it to the address serial number. And this will continue for all the corresponding contact that we are trying to actually go and implement our numbering system there. Okay. So once we actually do this, okay, everything is done now in our no change in our behavior definition for projection view. Okay. Finally, we will have to go and execute the service binding and see how it will be affecting our application. Okay. So let me now go to our browser and let me refresh it again to get the latest code. Okay. And this time, okay, let me also show you that during this process, I have actually added one virtual element attachment also just for my reference so that we can see which entries has attachment, which entries doesn't. Okay. So let me take this entry that has no attachment. Okay. This is still not active. That means I cannot edit it. Definitely I have to go and change the status. Okay. I can still edit it. Okay. That's fine. But I cannot delete it. Okay. If it is not active. Let me make this active. If it is active, I cannot delete. If it is not active, I can still delete. And that was the reason if I discard it, you should be able to see that delete is coming here. But as soon as I make it yes, the delete will be disabled. Okay. Now I am coming here and uh, now what I have to do is I have to go and add an address. And you see, I have actually added one address uh, serial number. This should be serial number. Let us go and change that quickly in our metadata extension. It will be a quick fix. So let me go to my metadata extension for the contact address and in my address serial number, I will say serial number, not ID. Okay. I am not showing it in my object page. Rather, I'm just showing it here. Okay. Let me now just quickly go back to our browser and refresh the page. Go back, refresh the page, click on go button, and for that my security, let us now try to edit and create one serial number. Okay. Now serial number when I'm going and creating, it will not show me anything. Let me just go and add a new address there. Hmm? Mahesh Towers, 32nd floor, apartment number 32-5. Okay. And oh, what it is an error, maximum 30 character we have to give. Okay. I'll say APT number 32-5 and that will go off. City I am saying um, Aurangabad and state I am saying Gujarat. Okay, that's it. Pin code I am not doing anything. I am saying just apply and you see the serial number is now generated for one. Let me create one more. Okay, and now this time I am saying uh, Rockyard Road, Mazgaon. It is Mumbai. It is Maharashtra. 400010, for example. And now again I'm saying apply. And you see this time serial number 2 is generated. Okay, I am saying save and that is now been shown here. Let me now go and okay see for the other one there is no serial numbers. Okay, even though we have created. Let me come back again to the same address, edit it and try to create one more. Now this time I am saying apartment flat 103, city is Hyderabad, state is uh, Telangana, and pin code is 560016, for example. Okay, and now I'm saying apply. And you see, this time it has created a draft one with the latest number 3. Okay, save it, and that will be actually saved to the database. Okay, this is how the complete uh, early numbering system works. Okay, with that I would like to stop here. Okay, if you have any queries please do uh, comment and I will try to actually uh, reply as much as possible. Request you to please do like, share and subscribe to my channel. With that, uh, thank you and happy learning.